Our meeting today is the LGBTQ plus Rap, and at this time I'll turn the meeting over to our first speaker.
Considering the other one just walked out the door, I guess that's
Yes, you will. There you go. Give it up for Sam.
Don't clap yet, I haven't said anything. All right, my name's Sam and I'm an addict. This is the second time that I have been asked to speak specifically at an LGBT rap or an LGBT panel. And it's like the fourth time, I think, I've been asked in general to speak in a way that represents both the Narcotics Anonymous program and the community that I am so grateful to be a part of. It's a common theme that I hear a lot of addicts talk about feeling different from like a time that they're really, really young. You know, like being able to identify that they felt other than the rest of their community, their families, their friends. And I definitely felt that way myself. But I was different in more than just the sense that I was constantly seeking something outside of myself. To make myself feel better, to make myself feel different. I remember when I was like 5 years old, waking up in the middle of the night, and I couldn't go back to sleep one night. And this was the 90s, so we had those big, thick, massive JCPenney catalogs. You guys remember those? And I remember flipping through them, and I was looking at the kids' clothes and picking out all the stuff that I wanted for Christmas because it was around Christmas time. And then I remember finding the women's lingerie section. And that was the first time that I was aware that I might feel a little differently than the other little girls. And my grandmother, I lived with my grandmother at the time, and my grandmother woke up and came out and she saw me sitting in the middle of the living room floor with that catalog open. And I sobbed. I don't know why I started crying. I don't know what it was inside of me that made me feel like what I was doing was wrong. But I knew beyond any shadow of a doubt that what I was doing was wrong in the eyes of everybody that loved me. And that proved to be true. Because later on so my mom is one of us. And during one of the stints that my mom got his life together, because my mom's also a trans man, one of the times that my mom got his life together, he took custody back of me. And before he went on his journey in transition, he decided that he wanted to join a religious cult. And that cult really, really hated people like me. They really hated people like him. And I remember telling my mom, I was like 12 or 13 years old, telling my mom that I liked girls. And it didn't go well. My mom said, "That's okay, we just have to go talk to Pastor Maples." And I was like, "Why do we need to go talk to Pastor Maples? What does that have to do with anything?" And we went, and we talked to Pastor Maples, and I was given an exorcism. It wasn't long after that my mom relapsed. It was like shared trauma between the two of us, I think. And so when my mom relapsed, she gave me dope for the first time. And when you combine, a queer kid in the South, and you add trauma and drug abuse on top of it, we go full tilt into that drug abuse, right? Because I already felt other. I already felt different. I already felt like I didn't belong in any way, anywhere. Like I didn't belong in my family. I didn't belong at the church. I didn't belong with my friends because my friends thought I was weird too. And then my mom gives me a fucking key bump at 13 years old and says, "Here, this will make you feel better." And it definitely made me feel better. And I remember thinking, I want to feel exactly like this for the rest of my life. Because it doesn't matter that anybody thinks that I'm weird when I feel like this. It doesn't matter that anybody's looking at me funny when I feel like this. I don't even care that I like girls when I feel like this, even though on any other given time, I'm so filled with shame and regret at the fact that I look at women the way that I look at women. It got to the point where I started telling myself that it wasn't, like I didn't really feel that way. I got to the point where instead of getting to have like a normal teenage life, I spent my teenage life using drugs, finding ways and means to get more, and usually those ways and means ended up with me in bed with a man. And if that doesn't fuck a little kid up, right? I'm not going to go into like a lot of detail about what my active use was like, just because like if you're in this room, you already know. You already know what active use was like. I don't have to tell you about it. You lived it. But I will say that for me, drug use cut me off so irrevocably from who I was. It made me so empty on the inside that it made me feel so empty on the inside. Sorry guys, give me just a second. I just realized that I forgot to pray before I started, and that's typically not a good idea for me to start doing anything without praying first, so I just needed to take a second. So it created this emptiness inside me that I was so hell-bent on filling. It was like a void that just sucked everything in. And it didn't matter how many drugs I put on it, how many men I slept with, how many people or how much money I had or how many friends I thought I had. None of that mattered because at the end of the day, I was still alone with myself, feeling empty and hating everything that I was. There was a pit inside of me that I never loved myself enough to fill with the right things. And I ended up I like to say that I dissociated pretty much the entirety of my teenage years and my early 20s. Like I wasn't present in my body from like the age of like 15 until like 26. I was not there. I was a person that existed in this world. I worked, I did drugs, I got married. I married a man because I was just so, it was like who I was a person standing over there, and who was living my life was this empty shell of what I thought everybody wanted me to be. And the only way that I could reconcile the fact that who I was all the way the fuck over there and who was living my life was right here was if I couldn't allow myself to look at who I was. I couldn't allow myself to acknowledge that I was a living, breathing person. I was a soul existing in this world. So instead of actually dealing with any of my shit, I just shut it all down. And I spent 10 years in a relationship with a man who was incredibly abusive. He was one of us. And it wasn't until his problem got worse than my problem that I thought that maybe we should do something about it, because within that time frame, I also The only good thing that ever came out of me pretending to be straight was that I got a daughter out of the deal. Like, I have a beautiful 11-year-old little girl, which is the only thing he was ever good for, was giving me that baby. But I remember when she was like 3 or 4 years old, and I was absolutely obliterated on stimulants, and he was absolutely obliterated on opiates, and neither one of us was fit to be a parent. And I could pretend to be straight for drugs. I could pretend to be straight to keep my family happy. I could pretend to be a lot of things, but what I couldn't do was go down the same path that my mom went on that led me to feeling the way that I did. Because when my daughter was born, I managed to stay clean throughout my pregnancy with her. And when she was born, they laid her on my chest, and I looked at her, and I said, I am never going to do to you what she did to me. And when I came home from work, high out of my mind, and my ex-husband was nodded out on the couch with a cigarette burning a hole in our couch, and our 3-year-old daughter playing on the floor in front of him, I was like, oh my God, I have to fix this. I have to do something about it. And I remembered my mom, as shitty as my mom was, I remembered my mom, he did one thing for me. He planted a seed by taking me to meetings when I was really young, during one of the many attempts at getting clean that he made. And I remembered thinking, as I was looking at him, nodded out and burning a hole in my couch, he needs to go to a meeting. He needs to go talk to those people who don't do drugs anymore. Not me. I'm cool. I have everything under control. Like, I am perfectly, like, just acceptably numb in my life. Like, I'm totally fine. I can keep going the way that I've been going. But he has a problem. And so I woke him up, and I said, get in the car, we're going to a meeting. And he didn't want to, because he didn't want to admit that he had a problem. And I was like, my dude, you are drooling on yourself. Normal people don't do that. He was like, yeah, but you get high every day. Yeah, but I'm not drooling on myself, so it's not the same. So it took a few tries, but I dragged him to a meeting. And what ended up happening was I put myself in these rooms to try to fix, manage, and control somebody else. And what ended up happening was the Rooms of Narcotics Anonymous reached out to me and said, we love you just as you are. We love you no matter what. And at the time, I didn't realize how important that was going to be to me. But I'd never experienced unconditional love from anybody in my life. Like, love had always had terms and conditions that may apply. And I felt like every relationship I got into, I was checking a little box and hitting proceed. But there was no box to check and no button to push in these rooms. The only thing I had to do was show up. And at my very first meeting back to NA, I picked up a black and gold key tag. My very first meeting back to NA, I picked up a black and gold key tag because I hadn't done my drug of choice in 7 years. I had switched to other substances, and I boldly got up in front of that meeting and bawled like a baby, like I had done this great and momentous thing. And I remember, looking back, every pair of eyes on that room looking at me and being so embarrassed on my behalf. And I used to be really ashamed of that, and I used to carry that with me as like one of the most humiliating things that I've ever done. But instead of thinking that it's humiliating, now I look back on it and I'm like, what a fucking junky ass thing to do. Like, that is so on brand for who we are as people. And you know what? No one in that room that night actually made me feel bad about myself. They hugged me, they told me they loved me, and they said, keep coming back. And I did. Because that's what unconditional love is, right? You see somebody do something really embarrassing, and then you hug them and tell them, "Come on, buddy, keep coming back. You got this. You know, we can get through this together." And so I did. I kept coming back, and I kept coming back, and my ex stopped coming back, but I didn't. Because at some point, while dragging him to those meetings, a seed was planted and a message was carried from me. I overdosed August 12th, 2018. It was my last hurrah. I was at a bar. I met some really cute sorority girls in the bathroom of that bar, and they looked at me and they said, "You look like you like to party." And I said, "You have no idea." And I remember when I overdosed, laying on the sidewalk outside of that bar, looking up at the sky as several very beautiful women stood over me and fanned me like this as I was aspirating on my own vomit, like this was gonna, like fanning me with a bar menu was gonna save my life. They ended up calling an ambulance, which is why I'm still here today to be able to share this story with you. But that overdose happened on August 12th, 2018, and August 13th, 2018 is my clean date. And that happened in the midst of me trying to force my ex-husband to get clean. I didn't go to a meeting for a month after my overdose. But when I came back, I picked up a white key tag. And the friends that I had made in the few months going to these meetings, dragging my ex along with me, they didn't judge me for picking up a white key tag after lying my ass off and picking up a black and gold. They hugged me, they told me they loved me, and they told me to keep coming back. And I kept coming back, and I kept coming back, and I kept coming back, and I started working steps, and I got a sponsor. And when I got a sponsor, they say when you get clean that you should get a sponsor. If you're a woman, you get a sponsor that's a woman. If you're a man, you get a sponsor that's a man. And I'm sure you guys can imagine how, as someone who likes women, that might have been a little bit problematic for me. Because in my early recovery after my overdose, I kicked my ex-husband out and I told him, "You gotta go, I can't do it, you gotta go." So I was alone for the first time in 10 years. I was freshly clean, for real this time, not just bullshitting everybody around me. And they said, "Find a woman that you can be comfortable sharing your most intimate of traumas with." And I said, "That sounds like a recipe for me falling in love." And it was. I fell like head over heels for my first sponsor. I didn't know it at the time. I thought that I was just like, we were just like really intimately close, and she just really understood me, and like she just really cared about me, and you know, she's straight, so it doesn't matter how I feel about our relationship because there's nothing going on. She's got a boyfriend, and like, yeah, he's in prison, but it's fine. It's fine. So I worked up to my fourth step with her, and then I dipped the fuck out because that was too intimate. Like, it was one thing when she was just like pretty blue eyes and blonde hair staring back at me, but it was something totally different when she knew all the tricks that I turned in order to get dope, and that made it a little too real for me. So I ended up getting a different sponsor, and this time when I got my next sponsor, I went with a woman who I was not attracted to because she was an old lady with like 5 missing teeth. And I love her so much. To this day, she is one of the greatest people that I know, but I was not attracted to her. So I was like, surely to God, this will be fine. Turns out, I just have a problem with relationships with women in general. It doesn't matter if they're attractive to me or not, because if they're not attractive to me, then I put them on the pedestal of like a replacement, like pseudo mom, because my mom was so trash, and so I tried to turn her into my mom. And I realized, you know what, maybe I should just, I know they said that I should have a female as a sponsor, I know they said that I should have a woman as a sponsor, but I don't think that's going to work for me. So then I got my current sponsor. And my current sponsor is one of the best things that ever happened to me in my recovery. Because I remember thinking, if I'm not going to have a woman, then I need to have a man for me. But I don't trust men. And the reason that I have the sponsor that I have today is before I ever even asked him, oh God, I'm going to cry. Before I ever even asked him to be my sponsor, I was having a very messy, public, painful period of growth in these rooms. And I was screaming and crying and holding meetings hostage. And I had just come out officially, maybe a couple months before. And while I was having this messy mental breakdown, I left the meeting and I went outside and I sat on the curb and I was sobbing. And I said, I feel like nobody's ever going to love me for who I am because I can't love me. And I feel like everybody always leaves. And he put his arms around me, and he hugged me as tight as he could, and he said, you will never be alone again. I am not going anywhere. And if a woman had said that to me, I would have thought it was a marriage proposal. But coming from like this big dude with a like gnarly beard and like really rough calloused hands, and there was nothing attractive about him to me. But what did attract me to him was he felt like the embodiment of unconditional love that they talk about in these rooms. And if you don't have a sponsor that makes you feel like that, you need to find a new sponsor. It's been a long road, like coming to accept myself. I spent a lot of time like being really like obnoxiously gay. And I mean that quite literally. I was like, think about a gay teenager in like a really loving and supportive family who like, you know, she comes out and she gets her hair cut really short and she has like 9 girlfriends back to back to back to back to back and like tries to convince all the straight girls at her school that she's gay. I did that at 27 years old. And you know what? Nobody ever made me feel bad for it. Maybe the weird relationships, they made me feel a little bit bad for those, but like I needed to feel bad about those. But the rest of it, like I was so worried that nobody was going to accept me for who I was that when I finally did accept myself and I came out and I told everybody, hey, like, by the way, I'm like a flaming dyke. Are you guys cool with that? The running joke became that I said it like 50,000 times a day. I would be like, you know, because I'm gay, because I'm a lesbian, and like we'd be talking about like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and I'm like, I love peanut butter jelly sandwiches as a lesbian. Or like, I could find a way to turn anything around back to me being gay. And these rooms tolerated that so well, and I think it's because so many of us finally figure out, like, who we are and where we belong, so that, like, yeah, maybe not everybody realizes that they're gay in the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous. But we do figure out certain things about ourselves, and we gain an acceptance for that. And so we might get a little bit obnoxious when we realize that we're actually really hard workers and we can hold down really good jobs and make a lot of money. And we might take Snapchat pictures showing our bands, like I've seen a few people in early recovery do when they get that good money that they didn't get from hustling dope, and they didn't spend it all on dope before they could take the Snapchat picture. My acceptance of myself just came out in such a beautiful, passionate, and fabulous way. And really, what I think the best thing about my recovery as a person in the LGBT community is that it doesn't matter that I'm in the LGBT community. Because I know the topic of this panel, I know the topic of this rap is being a part of the LGBT community, but you can ask anybody that has known me or heard me speak before that the story that I just shared in front of you all is no different than the story I would have shared if I was sharing the women's rap. It's no different than the story I would share at a speaker meeting. Because it doesn't matter which room of Narcotics Anonymous I'm in. It doesn't matter which group of addicts that I am in. If we follow our program, if we apply ourselves to the 12 steps, if we gain an understanding of the 12 traditions, you're not going to give a fuck if somebody falls in love with their female sponsor. You're not going to give a fuck. Well, you would care, but you know, you're not going to give a fuck who someone loves. You're not going to care who they kiss. You're not going to care what they do with their lives as long as they're doing it clean. As long as they're not hurting anybody else. Everything else is peanuts, man. It doesn't matter. Anyway, that's all I got. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, Sam. That's my sponsor. All right, and we have our second speaker this afternoon, and let's bring up Dave M.
Hi, family. I'm an addict. My name is Dave. So I came here to listen to some speakers, and as I was sitting back there, I got a phone call from your programming committee, lovely committee, and asked me if I could share because someone else wasn't able to show up. And when I got here, I was scheduled to speak at one of the first workshops yesterday, and that got mixed up, and I said, well, I'm available. If you need me, call me, right? So I'm grateful that I can be of service to Narcotics Anonymous today, that I can be of service to anybody. I'm going to tell you a little, and here's the part of this that kills me is because, and I'll just be honest, today, as opposed to when I first got clean, and I'll tell that story a little bit, but today, my sexuality isn't who I am. Okay, that might make sense to some people. It's important, but it's not who I am today. So it's something that I rarely ever share about. And I speak a lot. I do a lot of H&I meetings. I do all that, and it's not something that ever comes up. But if someone asks, I certainly share, right? So when they asked me to share on this, I was like, what the fuck, man? I mean, how do they know? I grew a beard in November. I got a flannel on. I got my boots. What the fuck, man? Right? So I think I might have a reputation that precedes me. I may or may not go into that as well. I want to start by letting you know that some of my experiences probably helped develop who I am today and the way I perceive the world, and probably had a lot to do with that void that I felt long before I ever picked up drugs, okay? And some of those experiences for me are coming from a very dysfunctional, abusive, religious family. And you throw all those together, and it was a hot mess, right? So there was a lot of things happening at home. There was addiction going on at home. My mother never had street drugs, never even drank alcohol, but prescription drugs was a thing. And I watched her in her addiction and where it took her to several suicide attempts as a young child that I watched, and having an abusive stepfather physically and having a sexually abusive neighbor. And all these things were going on at once. And what I found from a young age, especially with the sex, was that this is something, even though it felt wrong somehow, I enjoyed it, right? It was filling a void in me. Somebody was showing me some attention, right? Another thing that happened at a very young age is my older brother found out that I had messed around with another guy just a few years older than me, something that I was very willing to do, and he went and he told my mom. And I was forced to put my hand on a Bible and swear that it did not happen. And I was told that if I lie, I'm going to burn in hell, and if I did it, I'm going to burn in hell. So I carried around a lot of guilt and shame for just being who I felt I naturally was, right? So it is no wonder that when I found drugs, I was able to numb myself. I found something that made me feel normal and okay, which isn't necessarily true either, because the first time I used, I didn't know how it would make me feel. And I think that's important to recognize even today. And to get real honest, the very first time I used it was because I wanted to be accepted by a group of people. And I find that even when I get clean, I carry that into my recovery, right? That I will hide behind masks in order for you to accept me. Because when it comes down to it, I'm not okay living in my own skin, right? That is that depth of my inner core that's crying out for acceptance and for someone to love me and just be okay with me, because I couldn't do that myself. The one thing that recovery has given me more than anything, and I could make a list of things that I'm grateful for today that I've received from working steps and doing this work, but the one most important thing today is I can look in a mirror and not be disgusted by the reflection that's looking back at me, because there was a time I couldn't say that. I was disgusted by my own reflection because of all that guilt and shame that I carried around. And it was you people that when I got here loved me unconditionally. It was very important when I first found these rooms, some things that had happened, and I appreciate what I heard the prior speaker sharing. I went to this meeting, and this guy after me, it was in a church basement, and it was another fellowship because back then we didn't really have a lot of NA. And this guy comes up to me and he says, they called him Big Red. He was a big, burly dude, right? And he shook my hand real hard and said, "I'm Big Red and I'm going to be your sponsor." And he pointed to a picture on the wall, this church, and said, "You need to know two things. That man on that wall loves you and I love you too." And I was like, oh, hell no. It's some kind of cult. I was intimidated because of my experience as a child, what had happened to me. I was extremely intimidated by over-masculine men. And there was a woman in that room. Her name's Kathy, okay? And Kathy was also an addict. And she recognized that in me. I didn't know it at the time, but she recognized some other things in me too. Okay? And she started taking me to Indianapolis to meetings. And Indianapolis, even at that time, only had 3 NA meetings a week, but there were some other fellowship meetings that she took me to, and they had gay meetings. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged, right? And I forget sometimes how that important that is to especially a newcomer coming in the rooms, because we talk a lot about, and this is important too, that it's about unity, right? It doesn't matter your age, race, sexual identity, any of that stuff. We're all equal. But sometimes I forget, being someone that's been around for a minute, how important that is to a newcomer walking in the rooms, that they have a sense of identity. And for that, I'm grateful that when we come to conventions now, and this convention particularly recognizes that and has meetings like this. I came around, and some of my story too is that from a very obviously I was using when I was very young, and I found that I could have sex with guys for money, and then I could buy my drugs, and that was a big part of how I supported my habit, as well as I would break into your house in a heartbeat. Right, I would take everything. Just because we get clean doesn't mean all those behaviors stop right away. And this is kind of, it's kind of a little uncomfortable for me to share about this, because I don't share about this stuff a lot. But even into recovery, that behavior continued. Okay, I found that when I got clean, I was homeless. I had moved to Indianapolis, living at a Salvation Army. I had a bag of clothes to my name. I was going to meetings. I had a sponsor, but I couldn't even pay my fucking rent. Right, and I found in Indianapolis that there was this opportunity that presented itself, and I continued those behaviors. I shared about those finally with my sponsor, and I found that when I share something like, oh, I need you to know I acted out on some old behavior, blah, 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 and my sponsor responds with, well, if you just did it, it ain't fucking old behavior, is it? Absolutely not. So I'm grateful for steps 6 and 7 that allow me the opportunity to take a good look at some of these things, and when my back's up against the wall, and when I truly desire change, that I can obtain that by becoming willing to let go. Sometimes I'm afraid to do that, okay? And the reason why is because I don't know what's on the other side, right? Just like with any other kind of fear, I'm afraid to let go. Sometimes it's easier to hang on to acting out because it's comfortable. I know what to expect. I know what to do. Even though I know by watching other people, it doesn't have to continue to be that way. But what I have found is anytime I become willing to let go of something or somebody that's keeping me sick, what I'm doing is moving out of the way and allowing the higher power of my understanding to give me every single thing that I truly desired and needed. I've had a lot of experiences in relationships. And I'm going to let you know that when I got here, I didn't know what the fuck to call myself. And especially then, you're either gay or you're straight, right? And I was afraid to really discuss this stuff in some of the meetings when I started coming to NA. So right about the time I was 4 years in, I started really devoting myself to Narcotics Anonymous. It's here where I found like my home. I love our literature. I love the concept of addiction. But back then, there were no gay people in Indianapolis and NA. A lot of bikers. And I can remember one of those guys who was well respected with a lot of clean time told a friend of mine that I was hanging out with. My friend went to ask him to be his sponsor. And this guy said, yeah, I'll sponsor you on 2 conditions. 1, you only go to 1 fellowship. And 2, and he looked right at me, he says, you don't hang out with faggots. I struggled with that for a long time, and that wasn't just that person. It was, sadly enough, it was more common than probably not at that time. I am grateful today that we live in a society and we have a fellowship that has added some words to our literature, like sexual identity, to help maybe bring some people around to that understanding that it doesn't matter what the fuck we are, that we're welcome here. I did not allow that to keep me from exploring who I was. One thing I do know is early on it was important for me to have a label, right? So I was like, oh, I'm gay. Oh, no, I like this girl. I'm straight. Or I don't know what I am. I'm bi, you know. And I vacillated for a really long time with that. And today, this is just me. I choose not to label myself anything. I'm Dave. I'm a sexual human being. And if I'm attracted to someone, I might pursue fucking them. You know, I say that kiddingly, but not really. It doesn't matter what I label myself today. For me, it's not important. And a lot of the reason I find that it's not important is because we have this pink pamphlet called Self-Acceptance. It is by far my favorite pamphlet, right? Because that is, like I said, it's what's at the core of this dis-ease that I feel, right? That I need to be okay living in my own skin. It doesn't matter what I label myself, I need to be okay with me. And today, I am okay with me. Because I'm okay with me, it's less important that I have a label to present to you. Because what it comes down to today is what you think of me is truly none of my fucking business. And what I have found, and we hear this a lot, those who judge don't matter, and those who matter do not judge. In Narcotics Anonymous, I did not allow that bias, that prejudice, that hate, that fear from other people walk myself out of the room. I kept coming back. I continued to do service work. I continued to share with my sponsor. I continued to be a member of Narcotics Anonymous. And those people have fallen away. And I found a group that I feel comfortable with, and they love me for who I am, regardless of labels. There's a couple things that, I'm a literature guy, okay? People are warned. There's a couple things in here in our literature, that really stick out to me. My favorite chapter by far is Recovery and Relapse. And there's something in here that for me defines what addiction really is. It says obsessive behavior is a common denominator for addicted people. We have times when we try to fill ourselves up only to find out that there is no way to satisfy us, right? So that's that void that I was referring to. Part of our addictive pattern is that we can never get enough of whatever we think we want. Sometimes we forget and we think that if we can just get enough food or enough sex or enough money, we'll be satisfied and everything will be all right. Man, that's deep to me because once I got here in the program, I thought that the desire to use is gone, right? And our promise, in case you're new and you've never heard this, our promise to you is that an addict, any addict, regardless of sexual identity, it doesn't matter, can stop using. We can lose the desire to use. That might take a little while, but we keep coming back and it happens, and we can find a new way to live, and that new way to live is through the steps, right? But what I found is that even though now that the desire to use drugs has been lifted, now I want to eat all the Cocoa Pebbles I can get my hands on, right? I am truly an addict 100%. Sometimes I forget. With a little bit of time, it's like, oh, I put that behind me. I'm okay now. And then anytime that I'm not spiritually fit, if I'm not working steps, doing all the things that I've been taught to do, I'm not spiritually fit, that void starts opening up again. And I think I can take something outside of myself. It talks about this in the Flat Book in Step 2. I can take something outside of myself and fix what's wrong with David on the inside, right? That's insanity. So I get the Cocoa Pebbles out, and I'll get the little bowl, fill it up, one bowl of cereal. That's fine, right? Oh, no. I got that much milk left. What do? more cereal, more milk, more cereal. Next thing you know, I'm getting the big stainless steel bowl out from underneath the cabinet. No one's looking. Family size box, Cocoa Pebbles, gone. I'm an addict. I do that in relationships as well. It says in here, and it points it out, and I think it's because it's important, that it says enough sex. And I think they put that there because that's a common theme with us too, right? It's like, oh, something makes me feel good. Oh, someone makes me feel good. And just like an addict, if someone makes me feel good, I want more of that. Even if that person is emotionally unavailable, right? I've been a victim of a lot of things from my past. Many of us have. But I find that in recovery, I'm not a victim anymore, but I allow myself to be victimized. I will put people in my life that are emotionally unavailable because I want them to love me, right? And then I get hurt, and I want to put myself on the cross and be the victim. You know, I'm glad I've had sponsors that have shared with me that I don't have to live that way anymore. That I can start putting, once it hurts bad enough, I can make some changes, practice the 6th and 7th step, and start putting healthy people back in my life. Sometimes, because I'm single, and sometimes I'm like, you know, in the mall, whatever, looking at people holding hands, and I'm comparing my insides to other people's outsides. Oh, I want that. Why can't I have that? And I start falling into negativity, and a big word that I don't like, self-pity. It says here, in that same chapter, a couple paragraphs down, there is something in our self-destructive personalities that cries for failure. Most of us feel that we do not deserve to succeed. This is a common theme with addicts. Self-pity is one of the most destructive of defects. It drains us of all positive energy. We focus on anything that isn't going our way and ignore all the beauty in our lives. With no real desire to improve our lives or even to live, we just keep going further and further down. Some of us never make it back. I have been obsessed in the past, before I got here, and at times in recovery, with the idea of just ending my own life. We've all known people that have done that, right? My little brother did exactly that. And he was one of us, both an addict and gay. That didn't have to be me, right? So, I'm sorry, I've shared about this a lot, and I usually don't get emotional about it, but that could have been me, right? It was the power of the people in this program that kept me coming back and taught me a new way to live. I have found that I do not have the luxury today to fall in self-pity, no matter what it might be that I think I want that I don't have. The opposite of self-pity is gratitude. Totally. As long as I continue to make myself of service and give back to other people what this program so freely gave to me, then I can stay out of that negativity. I can stay in gratitude and be grateful for just the way things are, even if it's not my way. One thing I want to share is that even though the people in the rooms helped me to learn to be okay with my sexuality and who I am today, my family, and I think this is important to talk about, I still lie to my family, right? And it's because of who they are. It's not because of who I am or who I'm afraid to be. It's because for my first 4 years of recovery, something else happened when I was like 6 months clean. I was walking home from work. I worked at a restaurant in downtown Indy. I got stopped by the police. They beat the holy shit out of me, put me in handcuffs, and threw me in jail. I didn't know why. They choked me till I passed out. I woke up in the back seat of a police car. A whole lot of political stuff was happening at the time in 1983. And they were trying to clean up the downtown area, and there was a lot of gay people hanging out there. I wasn't even one of those people, right? Those people scared me. I was walking back from work. And And as a result of all this happening, the Civil Liberties Union, the Indiana Civil Liberties Union, heard of what had happened. They interviewed me, and they asked me to do a press conference. Right now, keep in mind at that time I'm going to meetings twice a day. A lot of the meetings I go to are gay meetings. I have a sponsor. I have a support network. It's all good in Indy. And I get on TV, and the reporter said, "They say this happened because you are gay. Are you gay?" And for the first time, and I'm only like 6 months clean, and for the first time publicly, outside of a meeting, I said yes, and I'm proud of it. I did not realize, did not have I just didn't think that, oh shit, 6 o'clock, this is going to be on the news, right? My family saw that. And for 4 years, I was not allowed to come home. I was not allowed to visit. They wouldn't pick up a phone call from me. I wasn't allowed to see my little brothers and sisters. I missed their graduations, their marriages, their having children. And so after about 4 years, I had to make a decision. And that decision was very clear. If I ever want to be a part of my family's lives, this is something that I cannot discuss. Okay? And I just want to be perfectly honest about that. Today, I choose to be a part, when asked to be a part of that family, that my personal life is none of their business. Right? So I just ignore the questions. As a result, one of the things that's happened is in my family where once I was the scapegoat, everything was blamed on me, and rightfully so, right? Now I've changed that role into more the family hero, someone that can be there for them when a crisis does occur, like when my little brother took his life. And had I been unwilling to make some to lie to them, right? To find some kind of halfway mark there, I would not have been able to do that. So I am very grateful that I've been asked to share here. It's kind of difficult to share in such a short amount of time, a lot of the experience that I've had. I will say that I have a sponsee sitting out here that's kind of new in recovery, and this is something we've never talked about. So, hey, Hayden, guess what? It's good to be here. VRC is by far my favorite convention. I've been coming here forever. I had lots of beautiful memories with the people that I've met here over the years, and I look forward to making plenty more. Thanks for letting me share.